I'm Samuel Burke. I'm CNN's technology correspondent. It's great to see Daniel here, who paved the way for so many of us at CNN with your science and tech coverage. And thanks for having me again for this summit. The most exciting things for me being CNN's technology correspondent aren't getting to be the first one to go underwater with Samsung's new waterproof phone when that came out. Those are very fun. But the most rewarding things for me actually are seeing how we can use technology to actually change people's lives, which is why I'm so excited to be with both of you. Amy McGann is a foreign affairs officer with the US State Department, and Brent Wilton is the global head of workplace rights for Coca-Cola. And what you guys are doing is using blockchain to try and stop forced labor. This is something that we've looked at for years on CNN, and you can call it modern day slavery because that is what it is. But before we get into the nuts and bolts of the technology, I don't think that the average person knows how the State Department, which is the foreign affairs section of the US government, how they're working to stop this, why this is a priority for the US government, and that Coca-Cola would be doing this as well. So if you guys want to start by giving us a little bit of background about what your organizations are doing and why.
Sure. So I work in the Bureau of Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor at the State Department, and we try to incorporate human rights into U.S. foreign policy, and my office in particular works to incorporate labor rights. We focus on the ILO fundamental principles and rights at work, so we're working to combat forced labor, child labor discrimination, and advocate for freedom of association and collective bargaining. And
what's the reason? Just to do the right thing? Is that the simplest response?
Well, yeah, to do the right thing.
And Brent, a company like Coca-Cola, what's their role in this?
Well, as most of you know, the Coca-Cola company is truly global. We have operations in 207 countries. And as an organization, we operate a very strong set of corporate values. And one of those values relates to the issue of the abolition of forced labor and modern slavery, along with a range of other matters that are covered in our human rights policy. So we're here because it's very important for us as we look to engage our employees, engage our business, and engage our communities, that we are doing not just the right thing, but the best thing for them as individuals so that they are able to contribute the most, and the best for our relationship with our customers and consumers.
And is there any business reason behind this? Are you trying to protect your workforce to make sure that nothing along the Coca-Cola supply chain can ever come in touch with forced labor? Because we know big companies sometimes don't always know what's happening at every end of the supply chain.
And we're not perfect at that yet, which is why we're doing this sort of work. But yes, we are very intent to ensure that nobody in our business is subject to any form of modern slavery. And it comes in many, many forms. And it has an amazing ability to morph to suit circumstances. So it's a constant engagement point for us with our business, our supply chain, to make sure that we're doing all we can, all of the time, to stop it.
So from supply chain, let's get to blockchain, since that's the heart of the conference. How can blockchain be used for something that's so not digital? I mean, we've looked at this forced labor for years, as I was mentioning at CNN, and so much of this happens not on the books, written or digital. So how does the State Department take something so digital, like blockchain, and make that somehow help people who might be in these terrible working forced labor conditions?
Yeah, so, I mean, as Brent said, these are very complicated issues, and we're always looking for innovative solutions. So, I mean, technology has been used to help address labor rights issues, and when we learned about blockchain, it seemed like a tamper-evident, transparent technology where there didn't need to be a middleman would be quite useful in ensuring that, well, what Coca-Cola is working on is contract switching. So when a migrant worker leaves their home country and then gets to the destination country, they have evidence of what they've signed.
So you said two things to me that are really clear. No middleman, because as I know from talking to so many corporations who have had to deal with the problems of forced labor, it isn't because there's something necessarily rotten in their corporation. It's somebody that they've hired, who's hired somebody else, who's hired somebody else, and then that can come in, so all of those middlemen. And then you're talking about these contracts. So essentially, people who are leaving their home country and then maybe coming to another more prosperous country, hopefully more prosperous, dealing with contracts on blockchain. So is this something that has wider business ramifications then? A technology that can be applied to outside of forced labor then? Or are you working off of technology that's already been created in blockchain to help people as they go from one contract to another?
I mean, we're looking at technology across the board. Increasingly, you need as many eyes as possible on a problem if you're going to identify it and then remediate it. And so this has the potential of being a tool in our armory, not a silver bullet, not the only tool, but something that we can do. And I had a case explained to me this morning here in the UAE, where a domestic worker received a replacement contract from the one that she was issued when she left her home country, which was completely different to the original contract. And of course, someone in those sort of circumstances does not have the means to go getting law enforcement, facing lawyers and court costs and all the rest of it. So if this can be a tool whereby I employ you in Bangladesh and here's your contract of employment, that's put into blockchain so that when you arrive at Amy's place of work, that contract is inviolable. It cannot be subject to any manipulation or replacement. That brings certainty to the terms and conditions of employment. Because we've seen that contract replacement can put people in situations where they're no longer earning the money they thought they were going to earn, no longer doing the job they thought they were going to do, no longer having the terms and conditions of employment. That can of itself create a forced labor situation. So if this technology can do that in a meaningful way, and there's challenges out there as to how this could work, particularly in developing countries where you're bringing people from into more developed countries, but we see it as being a useful tool that's worth exploring to see if it's adaptable to this situation. And if it is, there are other things we can look to use it for. One of the things we do a lot of is social auditing. We do about,
social auditing.
We go out and audit our businesses. We do about 2,500 audits a year of our bottlers and our supply chain. One of the things which can occur from time to time is falsification of audit reports. Maybe blockchain can be a technology that we can use to secure our audit reporting processes.
Most of the people in this audience are very familiar with blockchain, but not everybody. My mom's out in the audience today, and she's learning
about... Hey, I'm your mum. I'm not that familiar with it either.
So she's learning about it for the first time, as are many people here. So if you can just walk me through, literally step by step, about the exact situation you're talking about. Somebody who's leaving their home country, maybe to become a domestic worker. What would happen exactly? They get the contract and then it's on blockchain. Walk me through step by step, and then they want to make a change. So tell me how it would happen online if I'm sitting at my computer leaving the Philippines or Nepal this morning.
I'll do my best because this is what part of the project is about, is to work out how to do this. But the theory would be, we're in a situation where an offer of employment is made and a contract is signed. That is then saved electronically into blockchain. So both signatures of the employer and the employee are on it. It's dated. You can't change the pages. It's locked in. That would then travel with the workers. So when they arrived, say, here in the UAE, they would then be able to bring up their contract with the person who's employing them, and that same contract was there. If there was to be change, it would be done by mutual agreement, and a change would be made to that electronic ledger. But unless and until there was agreement, there would be no ability to change it. That's the theory. Now, as I said, some of the challenges is, how do you do that in some countries where you don't have a lot of technology infrastructure in place that enables you to capture that initial contract and preserve it electronically at the time? Because if you look at some of the sourcing that goes on in some countries, not in our supply chain necessarily, but you've seen a lot of it in the Gulf with people coming on construction contracts. They're coming from quite remote parts of countries, and that can be a challenge. One of the things I think we're going to have to bring into this picture are the ethical recruitment players.
That's what I'm thinking about right now, because I'm thinking, okay, if somebody doesn't have internet access, but maybe there's somebody in their village, their town, their small city that might, or an internet cafe type situation. But of course, a lot of times, those are run by recruiters, and we know that not all recruiters are ethical. So that's where that challenge comes in.
The world is full of people who like to do nasty things to other people. So
unfortunately,
it's going to be a multi-pronged approach. I don't think you can just take one solution to it, because as I said earlier, forced labor morphs itself. And even though they may have signed a contract, unless you've also addressed the other ways in which they've been employed, no fees being paid, etc., then a person can have a beautiful contract which is in place but still be debt bonded, unable to leave their employment, and other challenges around the forced labor space, which you've, as you said, they've been reporting on for years.
But I do see how this could be applied to a wider audience, not just those in forced labor. There are plenty of people who sign contracts who don't know what they're signing, don't know where to save it. Do I keep a copy of it on my email, my company email? There are a lot of broader ramifications for the workplace here beside this terrible problem of forced labor. So when is this going to happen? You're working with Coca-Cola, the US government and Coca-Cola are working together. How are you going to implement it? Where are you going to implement it? Amy.
It's going to be implemented through Coca-Cola's supply chains. I think Brent is probably better.
You just said before, not everyone understands blockchain, what it is. We're still in that phase of making sure that we have parties at the table that understand exactly what this is, because it needs a lot of trust. Because the last thing you want to do is go to a company and say, we want you to do this project because we don't think the contracts of employment are secure. They're going to say, are you saying I don't have proper contract? No, we're not saying that.
People get defensive.
Exactly, so you've got to build that trust. And so we're working with the IOM and others to help us identify which is the best way forward. We're also working with a provider so that we get the tool right, so that when we are able to get our project up and running, we can move quickly to implementation and just see whether or not we can get that improvement that we want.
Go ahead. No.
And in addition to getting the suppliers' trust, it's also important to get the workers' trust so that they feel comfortable signing the contract in their home country.
So is the idea that with this partnership and the pilot program, if it goes well between Coca-Cola and the United States government, that then you take this tool and make it available free to people? Is that the end goal here?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, we operate a very open approach to all of our human rights work. Everything we've done on human rights is available, open software, so to speak. You can go on our website, steal it with pride, and just duplicate it. If this
That's
works,
what you want. You want people to take the tools you've
the
developed.
The more people are doing this, the better. It's not just for the Coca-Cola company to say, this is our little... No, I want everybody to have it. If it works, it should be able to work for everybody.
And I just want to go back to some of those challenges you were talking about, because we do know that so often these are the poorest people in our world. So what are some of the solutions that you're looking at to try and bring this to them? Does it mean it needs to be mobile first? Because so many times in poor communities, mobile internet is much more readily available than a fixed line connection would ever be. What are some of those focuses?
I think it's going to require more than one technology solution, to your point. It depends where we do the pilot. Do we go for the hardest nut to crack first, or do we try it on a little bit more stable environment first? That's going to be a key point. One of the challenges we have in a lot of our supply chain, where we do need to be able to have better line of sight, is we don't have enough internet coverage. You go to places like Africa, etc., it's awful. That's why we're investing in this low Earth satellite network to bring internet to the world generally. Some of these things, it's chicken and egg, which comes first. But I think if we can prove, even if it's done on a simple way, on a hardline computer, that we can connect the two together and bring transparency through the process and clarity and agreement through the process, then I think we can look at other platforms we can run it off.
Talking to you guys ahead of time, you both made clear and just restated that this is part of the toolbox. Blockchain is one part. There's no single technology that's going to solve this. So I'm just curious, and either of you can answer, what are the broader tools then? If blockchain is just part of one tool in the toolbox, what can it work in conjunction with then?
I mean, there are other technologies like UAE, for example, is using the electronic wage payment system to ensure that workers are getting paid what they agreed to and on time. And then, as Brent said, ethical recruiters in the home country.
Yeah, we're doing, as I said, we do a lot of auditing to check to make sure things are being done properly.
And what did you, social auditing?
Social auditing.
What does that mean exactly?
We have a program where we do about 2,500 a year. We've been doing them since 2003, and that includes our bottling family as well as our first tier suppliers. Anyone registered to supply to the Coca-Cola company has to go through an audit to be able to qualify, and then we monitor them. And if there's a problem, they have certain time frames to correct it. It's about legal compliance with a few issues around migrant labour and land rights. So that's one tool.
And why do you call it social auditing?
Because it doesn't look into environment, it doesn't look into health and safety, it just looks at our social piece, hours of work, wages, etc.
And that's not on blockchain right now.
That's not on blockchain at the moment.
Yeah.
That's where I said there could be a process going forward. The other one we're using is telephone technology. And this is very challenging. There's a lot of offerings out there now that enable you to give work a voice, either as part of an auditing program or to be used subsequent to an audit, so that people are continually able to raise issues to you after you've gone. So that's another area where we're looking to do it, where you can push information out to workers, let them know their rights and what they're entitled to, and pull information back out from them as to how they're experiencing life. But again, technology is a necessity for that, and it's not everywhere yet.
So that's all done via mobile.
Correct, and then we'll look out there and see if anyone else in this community has some other great ideas on some technological solutions. We'll happily look at that as well, because the thing is, we need to know. And we operate at very low levels in economies. We are nationally based in our bottling operations, and we source globally, but we source ingredients, agricultural products, down onto farm levels. That's very complicated to do with traditional old style approaches. So we need new technology to help us with that, or new engagement models in communities to help us make sure that those people are also being treated with respect.
Brent and Amy, it's really interesting as you guys are talking, and when I was just sitting here before and I was looking up at the Smart Dubai sign, it has that little face that looks like those happy faces that you push at the airport, and people think that looks very simple and don't realize that something like that can transform a business. If anybody has a chance, I would suggest you read this amazing New Yorker article which talks about that happy face. When you do that, sometimes businesses can take that information and completely transform a company from the smiley faces. If you have a convenience store and one location is doing so much better than the other, and they see that the employees and they see that the customers are all pushing that sad face, they realize something is wrong at that particular location. And they've done things as simple as realizing when this manager goes to this location, there are a lot of green happy faces. And when you go to a different location, when he goes to that one, all the green faces, the smiley faces go with him. Now, it might sound just like a cute story, but if you actually think about if that information isn't just at the Dubai airport, but is that a place where maybe a worker, an employer isn't being fair with people's contracts, and all of that information goes onto blockchain so that people can know, well, maybe the people are pushing that red unhappy face because they're not happy that their contract has been changed, their pay has been changed. And if all of that is on blockchain, for the employers, the big bosses, for the medium boss that might be the one doing this unethical work, for the employees to see that, something just as simple as pushing the happy face, pushing the sad face on blockchain for all of us to see could completely change not just how we are, but also change how people are employed and the wages that they receive. Thank you so much, Brent and Amy. I really appreciate it, and I'm going to be looking forward to reporting on CNN what Coca-Cola and the United States State Department are doing with this project, because as I started out by saying, this is a real chance to use blockchain to change the world for something good. So I truly hope something great comes out of it and that we can see incredible changes from it and report on those. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.